and welcome to our show. Here we are where spirit meets story, truth and mystery with your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell. We are journeying together through the deeper meanings behind today's world events, ancient wisdom, and the quiet whispers of the divine. We're going to reflect, remember, and reconnect. If this is your first time with us, welcome to the family. Make sure to follow us and ring that bell, check those checks, and click on that link to subscribe wherever you're watching and listening from wherever you are in the world. This show isn't just a broadcast. It's a broadcast with intention, with spirit, and with love. Now, here is Douglas.
Welcome, everyone. I'm here with my co-producer, Oz, behind the curtain tonight, and we have a great show for you tonight. We want you to check in with a chat and emails at thesoulreportlive@gmail.com to talk to our special guests a little later in the show. Tonight, we enter a sacred season, a time of illumination, reflection, and spiritual practice that transcends commercial hustle. Christmas, in its truest sense, is not merely a date on a calendar. It's an opening of the heart, a time when the divine light is invited to shine in and through us. Many traditions speak of the 12 days of Christmas, a period from December 25th through January the 5th, not just as festivity, but as an arc of spiritual awakening. It is a window where the veil between spirit and matter, heaven and earth, our inner world and our outer experience are thinner, more receptive, and more alive. Tonight, we'll explore what it means to be practical in our spirituality, not as a concept, but as a living way of being, to move from belief to action, from prayer to service, and from comfort to courageous compassion. And later, we're joined by a remarkable guide, someone who has walked from the world of construction and finance into spiritual mentorship. The author of the Infinity Within Trilogy, Kris Land, is with us tonight, and we'll hear about his journey from the physical to the metaphysical to the spiritual, and how we can all walk towards sovereign spiritual living right here, right now. But first, let's awaken the light within. In every spiritual transition, there is a time of return, a time of light, a time of remembering who we truly are. For Christians, Christmas commemorates the birth of Christ, the embodiment of divine love in human form. But beyond the story, there is a living truth. Christ consciousness is not something you wait for, it's something you live. Christmas is not just gifts and gatherings, it's about illumination, the light awakening in the dark places of our own hearts. The light that asked us to practice not just faith, but faith in action, kindness to strangers, compassion for the lonely, generosity to the hurting, and peace amidst conflict. You know, we often speak of being spiritual. A lot of people give lip service to it. But spirituality without practice becomes poetry without footnotes. Beautiful, but underground. Practical spirituality, in general, means our spirit is reflected in our deeds. When we feed the hungry, forgive the unforgivable, love when it's hard, that's not just religion, that's light embodied. The 12 days of Christmas are a symbolic invitation. May the light you kindle today burn bright tomorrow. May the compassion you practice now guide your next step, and may the awakening you taste in these holy days extend into every moment of your life. And now it's my great pleasure to welcome a friend, a teacher, and a guide, someone whose life embodies the journey from the physical into the spiritual, from making a living into making a life. Kris Land is the author of the Trilogy Within. I should say the Infinity Within Trilogy. Let my dyslexia get back there. The Infinity Within Trilogy. Books that lead readers from the fear into the sovereignty, from confusion into clarity, and from reactive life into responsible, empowered living. Before his work as a spiritual mentor, Kris spent decades mastering the earthly crafts of construction, finance, and technology. Not small fields, I add, but areas where practical mastery and grounded wisdom are essential. For the past 40 years, he has brought simplicity to complexity and spiritual awakening into real world practice. Tonight, we get to explore not just his journey, but how the carpenter turned financial strategist turned spiritual mentor sees our world today, and how each of us might tap into the affinity within ourselves. Please welcome to the Soul Report, Kris Land. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight, sir. Tell me, how do you go from digging in the ground to reaching for the stars?
Thank you, Douglas. I very much appreciate the wonderful introduction. Um, it all started when I was fairly young. At about the age of 10 years old, I started playing with electronics and started writing software on an Apple II computer some time ago. And one of the gentlemen that bought an Apple II from me in North Dakota needed some farming accounting software, which didn't exist at the time. And so he knew how to write accounting software, or he knew how to do accounting. I knew how to code. And so we created a little company that did that. And a few years later, sold it for a fair amount of money.
Excellent.
And I was just over 17, just coming up on 18 when we sold the company. And it was fantastic, very exciting, and it put me into a deep depression. And so nowadays, of course, I look back and you hear stories about people that win the lottery and they destroy their lives. And I kind of understand it. What happened is that when all that happened, I kind of lost all my goals. I thought I'd accomplished everything I was ever going to accomplish. And I really had no direction of where I was going to go. And so in that time, I created 3 very simple goals that I will never fully achieve, but I can work on daily. And that was to have fun and learn and do neither the harm or impedance of others. And that was kind of like my first clawing out of this space. And then I got hired at a bank in San Diego, and my boss was a tried and blue atheist. And even though I have zero problem with anybody wanting to believe anything they believe, that didn't sit quite right with me. And his name coincidentally was Kris as well. And so I started really thinking about it. And the set of questions that kind of allowed a person to go through them and learn from that, at least I did and Kris learned from that all the downside is not believing we have a soul, and all the upside is in believing we have a soul. And so through those questions, and in my past, I'd spent a fair amount of time studying different theologies, so that was kind of a background. And then I'll sidestep in the story a little bit. When I was very young, 6 years old is when it first happened, I had the entire universe kind of shift on me, right, and become very transparent and have almost no texture at all to it. In fact, I remember at 6 years old, there was this toy train sitting in front of me, and I went to pick it up, and it felt like it had the consistency of smoke or tissue paper. I had that happen again at 8 and 12, and then so on through my life. I've had some various very strange things that are not considered typical, that are not considered part of what we're supposed to know and what we're supposed to do. And so with all that converging, it got down to the question of, okay, if we have a soul, what is a soul? And the Bible has some fantastic chapter and verses on this, and things like we are the children of God, or where Jesus says to his disciples, you will do everything I have done and much more. And there's many, many, many different versions of this throughout the whole book. And got me kind of really curious as to what all that meant. And so now to get to your question about how I transitioned, I'm not going to dive too much into that story right this second because I want to answer your question.
I think you did. I think you answered it already.
Well, what happened is I wanted to create a book from that place 40 years ago. I hired a ghostwriter. She decided on a weekly basis to make it her own book and not make it my book. And so I ended up firing her, and it went into a safe. And I sat on it. I haven't done anything with it since then, other than the concepts and things that I put into the book. All the ideas were put together back then, and it allowed me to have a different way of looking at how reality works. And then I dove into doing more technology stuff. And so I ended up founding 12 financial companies, or high technology companies. And one of them went through an IPO, and the other were either acquired or merged. And that kind of catches it up to now. A couple of years ago, my family moved to Texas, and I kind of got disconnected from the California technology base. And I started looking for something to do, so I started writing books. And so the first book that I was really comfortable doing was How to Build Your Dream Home. And it was because I'd been doing a lot of construction as a hobby during this time that I was doing technology. And so that's where I kind of learned how to write a book, is through the writing of these books. And during that time, my wife had some difficulties growing up and things. And so she always would ask me kind of some ideas on how I viewed life. And then at the beginning of 2025, she said, you know what, the concepts and the ideas that you have, the original book was going to be called The Soul Path. She said, you need to finish that book. And it's kind of like the Richard Bach story with the Jonathan Livingston Seagull thing, where it took him years to get the last, I think, chapter of his book written. Mm-hmm. Everything else written, but that last part. So in the beginning of 2025, I sat down and spent focused time and energy and finished the book. And it got published through Balboa Press middle of this year, and it's been getting phenomenal. I just won another gold award today on the book and the concepts and how it's being received.
Well, you're an unusual man, and I'm not sure if you've figured that out yet. From listening to your story, you were having these experiences as a young person, 6 years old, 7 years old, being able to see ectoplasma, seeing ghostly figures, seeing between dimensions, having this awareness of the universe as multifaceted, maybe multi-layered, perhaps different planes. Not too many people do that, Kris. And then here you are, 17 years old, you've made it, you got the money in your pocket, and now you got no friends to play with, nothing to do, you've got all your goals, and you're sitting there feeling sad. Been there, done that, let me tell you. So the point is that, do you realize that you're different than most other people?
Yes and no. When I say yes,
you look the same, I grant you that.
Well, the yes part is that, not too many people can say they started a company when they were 17 and sold it, and not too many people can say they've done all this high technology stuff.
That's true.
But the no part is that the book and the people that have been reading the book and responding and writing reviews, we all have NDEs or near-death experiences. Not all. Many of us have NDEs. Many of us have this fractional things happen to what we consider real. But we're taught to ignore it. We're taught to say it's not real. I imagined it.
Yep.
And what made mine really real was when I was the 12 years old, was the third time this universe shift happened. So the first time at 6, I got, after the toy train and everything, and I heard all this stuff, I got scared, ran up to my folks, and it went away. 8 years old, I played with it a little bit more, did a little bit more, saw a little bit more, got scared, ran to my folks, and it went away. At 12 years old, when it happened, I was even more curious. And here's where it gets interesting. And all you listeners, you're going to have to take a grain of salt with this and choose to believe me or not. It's up to you, because it's pretty crazy.
You don't have to say that on our show. We constantly say to our guests, you're in a friendly audience. Everybody that has mystical, spiritual experience starts off the same way, Kris. I'm not admonishing you, but you're not going to believe this. I'm not crazy. You might stop it.
But we're taught, right? We're taught that this stuff is not real and I shouldn't share it, right?
Only by people who do not know or have not had such an experience. That's why you're different. But tell us, what happened?
So this particular shift, this is the first one that made it very real for me, is because I'd started doing business and making money at a young age. I was able to afford my own waterbed, and back then waterbeds were a big deal.
Oh yeah.
And so I had a California King waterbed in my downstairs bedroom on a carpeted floor. When this thing hit and everything phased out and became smoky and ethereal, and I was hearing all this stuff, I took my finger and I pushed the waterbed, and it moved about 3 inches and scared the crap out of me. And I ran up to my folks.
The whole bed moved.
The whole damn bed.
And
scared the crap out of me.
How much does water weigh? 65 pounds per square foot? And you got a king-size water bed and you moved it.
Cow King.
Wow.
With a finger, one finger, this one. And scared the crap out of me, went up to my folks, went away. Next morning I went down and there is a mark on the carpet where the waterbed was.
Proof and the evidence that you moved it. Yep.
So now this didn't happen, this is not real, became, oh, wow, this is actually happening. But there's nobody talks about this stuff, right? Especially when I was around at that age.
The word telekinesis was not in your vocabulary, I'm sure.
No. I mean, and we're talking North Dakota, which is a fairly conservative state on top of everything else. So, and then since it sounds like your listeners have some fun stuff, I can take you to a past life experience that I ran across. So, and this will give you a little bit more of that interesting thing. So I moved to San Diego, and a friend of mine was having a wedding, and they knew the bride and groom's parents. And so we got invited to sit at the bride and groom's table. And I'm sitting across the table from the groom's mom and dad. His name was Richard. I don't remember the mom's name. And we start talking, just like you normally do at a wedding, right? We're just talking and chatting away. And we start talking about an assembly line that we'd worked on. And we remembered each other. And we're talking in detail about what he and I had done. And we, at this time, it was a Chicago Ford manufacturing floor, building Mercury sedans and a particular type of military amphibious vehicle, I believe it was, an all-terrain vehicle. And we're having a full-on conversation about things we'd done together, barbecues we'd gone to, people we knew, stuff we'd talked about. And Richard's wife turns sheet white and freezes.
Really?
And I look first at her, and it's like, whoa, what is going on? And Richard looks, and she calmly looks at me and says, how old are you? I was 20 years old at the time. We were talking about things. She goes, you guys are talking about things that happened 45 years ago.
So how did you know that? Correct.
Not only knew it, but we had a full-on discussion about people we knew, worked with, and things we'd done together.
Wow. Okay, everybody's asking, so that's 45 years ago and you're 20-something years ago.
I was 20 on the dot.
So let us in on the secret. How did you do that?
I didn't do anything. I wasn't even aware I was doing anything. I was having a conversation that kind of went down this path and wouldn't have even given it any thought until she literally turned sheet white and said, "How old are you?"
How old was her husband?
63 or 64.
So I'm getting the picture here. You're having like a past life memory, and you're talking to him as an equal, like 40 years, he'd be 40 years, 20 years before that. And now she's listening to this and she's sitting there amazed. He's carrying on like nothing, right? He's just
Yeah, we had such a connection that he didn't even think about it either. We're just having a connection and talking about it. And as we were talking, we started connecting dots and going, "Oh yeah, I remember that you were doing this on the assembly. Yeah, we used having a whole conversation."
So how did she break the news to you? I mean, or what happened after she said like that's impossible? That was 20 years before you were born. What happened?
Actually, she didn't actually say that. She just said,
I got to go now.
Things happened 40 years ago. And then we just kind of phased out and started talking about normal things again.
Well, what did you think was happening then? When you must have thought about this later.
In retrospect, it's like, okay, past lives exist. Past lives are a real deal. And all the way back in the theology studies I've done, if you go all the way back to the Egyptians, I mean, they're firm believers in reincarnation or were. And pretty much all theologies have different versions of what reincarnation is. Now, how that affected me in the Infinity Within is, now I'm going to use a couple terms that I built in my construct. Everybody, again, can take what they want from this. But getting back to the soul, what is a soul? Well, according to many theologies, it's a energy being, God, that has the ability to create and destroy universes at will and exists outside of time. So what does a soul do? Well, it can create and destroy universes. And the only other thing I could really come up with that would be unique was play games. So now we say, okay, great. So we're in this thing called the planet Earth. I call it the game of planet Earth. It's a fourth dimensional universe. Mm-hmm. Time is the primary motivator in the game of Earth, meaning that it doesn't exist in dimensions 3 and below. And in the fifth dimension going up, it's not the primary motivator anymore. It's there, it's just not the most important, newest thing. Great, so we're in this game of Earth. Time is the primary motivator. What's unique about Earth for a soul? And I could only come up with one thing. Experience emotion. That would be interesting to a soul. Experience or emotion. Great. So if that's true, how does that look? Well, how many people have played Monopoly or chess or any number of board games or games? And what makes a game a game? Well, you have turns, you have goals, you have things that you want to accomplish, and then you hopefully at some point win, right? Well, what also makes it work are rules. Because you can't play Monopoly if somebody decides to take the entire bank for themselves or all the properties. So you have rules that you have to have. Okay, so in the game of Earth, what would those rules look like? Well, the very first rule would be, if you're a soul entering in this to experience emotion, you'd probably have to put aside most of your abilities, because otherwise you couldn't really experience much. So rule one is you take most of what you are and agree to leave it at the pearly gates. And when you create your avatar, what we are, we don't have direct access to all those abilities.
You're talking about your spiritual abilities now.
Correct. Yep. But that's not enough. The second rule is you have to forget that you had them. Because if you don't, the first time something bad happens, you just go, no, 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 and you change it.
Yep.
So you put the all the big powers away. You agree to forget that you had them. Except a soul wouldn't do that on purpose unless there was at some point a way out, right? You wouldn't want to permanently forever not be connected to all of what you are. So then you get to the next rule, which is, well, you're going to have turns. Well, what is a turn? In my analogy, it's a lifetime. So every single lifetime is a turn in the game you chose when you entered in.
Sounds pretty darn close to what a lot of people believe, Kris. That's
Understood.
That's a novel way of experiencing, let's say, the spiritual life and unfoldment and making into a game. I think that's pretty marvelous. You should write a book about this.
I probably should. In fact, my wife said I have to.
Oh,
So,
it says for sure. But
and then you have the archons, which a number of different theologies talk about. And in the purest sense of not the agnostics, but the I can't think of the name of the group that comes up with the archons in a big way. Even the Bible talks about them. They're the creators of reality, and they're supposed to be beings that feed on emotion, and they're supposed to be fairly evil. Well, in my kind of interpretation of them, again, if we're souls, we're not going to agree to go into a game where there's super evil people that are going to pick on us. That's just not a smart move, right? But we could choose to go into a game where the archons represent additional challenges and things that make the game and the turns harder and more difficult and more obfuscated from what we're able to achieve, because each turn you would have goals. And if you don't do them, you get to do that whole life over. And if you finish it, you get to move to the next turn.
That sounds pretty cool. So you lose a little, you slip a little, you stay there a little until you get it right.
And at some point, you accomplish whatever you decided to do in the entire game, and then you leave and go do whatever souls do.
The next evolution. That's fantastic, Kris. So listen, you got your book in front of you. Show everybody what it looks like. There it is. The Infinity Within. And the website is krisland.com. Where can people get your book, Kris?
So it's, if you look on Google for the name, it's everywhere. I've been very happy with the response. I've been nominated for the Eric Hoffer Award. I received a Kirkus Award and several other gold medals for this writing. If you go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, there's a number of other, I forget the name of the bookstore in Norway, but there's a bookstore in Norway that you can get it. You can get it almost anywhere right now.
Fantastic.
But here's an exciting story that I think you'll appreciate. So with Audible, you hire a narrator that narrates your book for you.
You can get an AI, I think, that can do that, can't you?
Yeah, no. AI is great for a lot of things, but I don't want that for my book. And so I really searched hard and found a narrator that has done Eckhart Tolle's work. He's done work for the Buddha. He's done work for Dean Koontz. He's done over 700 books in this space. His name's Eduardo. And so I finally was able to get a hold of him. And he said, okay, I can do the book for you. I finally convinced him to do the book. But he said, it's not going to be till next year. I said, you know what? For your voice and for who you are, I'm willing to wait.
There you go.
So we got the contract signed. In an Audible, you have to do the first 15 minutes to get the agreement formulated. So he does the 15 minutes 2 days later. And he finishes it and he says, you know what? I just put all my other contracts on hold. I'm not putting this book down. I'm going to finish it now. And he did.
The universe moves in mysterious ways. When the right time, there he goes. The door opens. Well, that's fantastic. So we'll get more to that when we come back after a short break. Hey, everybody, stay with us. I'm talking to Kris Land, who has an amazing book out now all about the affinity within you. We'll be right back.
Are you searching for clarity, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of the spiritual world around you? Meet Douglas James Cottrell, PhD, a visionary author and teacher who's helped countless people transform their lives. His books are a gateway to profound insights, offering guidance, inspiration, and the tools you need to unlock your full potential. From unlocking your intuition to discovering spiritual truths, Douglas's books are your trusted companions on the path to personal growth. Don't wait. Start your journey today. Visit his website douglasjamescottrell.com to explore and purchase his life-changing work. Your next breakthrough is just a page away.
So welcome back, my friends. We're talking with Kris Land. You know, when you were talking earlier about these mystical experiences, it's kind of like I've noticed that children have experiences and when they see auras or they see sparkly lights or they see grandma in the corner and they describe grandma to mommy and grandma has been long gone before the child was born. It scares people about these spiritual experiences and they tend to hold the kid back and say, that's not real. Don't believe that.
Exactly right.
It's the inexperience of the parents and the child says, okay, if you say those lights aren't there, mommy, whatever you say. But somehow you managed to connect this and you kept it going. But I think it's because you're special. You have these abilities. Like you've come with this sole purpose where now you can be the mentor, the way shower, right? A watcher almost. And people, I think they need to experience through other people's experiences first so they don't become afraid of the reality of the spiritual world around them. So when you come back to this story about, this voiceover, this voice book, and the man says, I got to put this down. Everything has its time and its place. I believe that. And so even when you had the first ghostwriter, and I don't want to comment adversely, but it was
That
like,
time and place.
that's right. That's where I was going with that. So do you have mystical experiences yourself? Do you foresee the book? Do you have prophetic dreams? Do you work in that realm as well? You must, I guess, with being although you got this the right and left side brain, a tech guy and a creative guy, right? So do you have those mystical experiences of seeing things before they happen?
Yeah, I don't know how rare it is, but my dreams are all full color.
Most people who are aware are the people who have black and white. They've got a little step up to go yet, but most people who are sensitive have color dreams. Yes.
Yeah. So the things that I see. So I had another one. So in the book, you can actually go through my timeline. It would be considered a non-fictional memoir with a spiritual guide approach. So you follow. The book has my non-fictional information in it, and then it has a fictional character named Gabriel, who is the kid who grows up and goes through this life. And then he meets a gentleman named Elias, who's his mentor. And the book is written, I wrote it intentionally so that it's not designed to preach. It's not designed to tell people you got to go believe this. It's designed where you follow the story of Gabe,
right?
And it shows a mirror of things that you can either accept or don't. And so the whole idea behind this is how I could take this construct and this idea and portray it in a way that I could impact the most number of people I could. Because one of the core things in the book, so I'm trying to get to answer your question. There's a lot of things that roll around in my brain.
That was a big question. It's going to take a little bit of explaining. Go ahead.
David Copperfield is a great place to start. David Copperfield has done some amazing, what I would consider true magic on stage, and what the world calls illusion. And the reason the world calls it illusion is because that's comfortable. It's within what we're taught. And yet some of the things he's done, I would argue, actually happened. They weren't illusion. And so you get to the point of, if I teleported in front of a group of 20 people and moved 100 feet off, it would damage probably some people because they just simply weren't ready for it at all. A lot of people would say, well, I just looked away and the guy walked that 100 feet. And a very small percentage would go, wait a minute, what just happened? But then, now getting towards your answer, there's a couple different things that keep somebody from teleporting, especially in front of a group of people. There are agreements and rules, but then the foundational thing that I'm a strong believer in is that what keeps every single person from getting a new job, getting an increase in revenue and money, or accomplishing a certain goal, comes down to one single word: doubt. And as we look at doubt and we approach something and we start saying things internally from being taught as a child from our lives, you can't do that. You're too small. You're not part of this. You're not a collective whole. All these things, the more we can strip away from doubt, what I call the illusionary veil, which in the book is called the orchard illusion, starts stripping away. And you get to see what's real behind the Oz's green curtains. And exactly to the point you said, children see ghosts. Children see things that are not normal because they don't have the illusionary screens built so strong yet. And then parents, of course, in order to keep the child from being scared or to explain in normal words what happened, is, oh, you just imagined it. It really didn't happen. No, there is no such thing as ghosts. And as you said, there's fear behind this as well. And so doubt and fear, I call signposts. They're things that when you start doubting and you see fear, that's when you start asking the questions. What am I afraid of? What is this fear? What doubt is it causing? And how can I start stripping away at it to see through what I want to really see? And so, there's an old saying that I've said since I was probably in my teens, is there are no such thing as coinkydinks.
Say that again.
There is no such thing as a coinkydink.
That sounds like a new word you've just coined.
Many years ago.
Okay.
And it means there is no such thing as coincidences. When you and I met for this, and the reason I came up with that saying was that I could go to pretty much any coffee store, anywhere, and have a very high chance of one or two random people showing up, sitting down in a chair next to me, tell me a part of their life story, and then we'd talk a little bit, and then they'd get up and they'd walk away. It's like, that's really strange.
Doesn't happen to everybody, Kris.
But what I found from that was there's something they said I needed, and there's something I said they needed.
Exactly.
So it wasn't a coinkydink that they showed up. It happened because it was supposed to happen.
I agree.
Wholeheartedly
agree. Yeah.
So
how do you say that? Winkadink? Is that how you say
it?
it?
Winkadink, yeah.
Okay. We'll make a note of that. We'll have a quiz next week on what was the word that Kris brought up on the show last week. We'll see.
My wife always tells me that I'm really good at making words up all the time, and it drives her crazy.
Well, you're a wordsmith. What can we say? 10 books, whatever. So, everybody's wondering while you're talking like this, some people anywhere I'm picking it up, they're saying, so, all right, Kris, how did you move that mattress with your finger?
Don't know.
Well, because
it just happened.
Yeah.
I was in a state. Okay. So in reference to everything I just said.
Yeah.
I was in a state that I didn't understand as a child. There was no doubt. There was no doubt in my brain whether I could or couldn't move the bed.
That's the answer I'm looking for.
As a child, we don't have the barriers of what's real and what's not. And so when I moved it, there wasn't this process of that's impossible, that's too heavy, you can't do this, this isn't going to happen. All that chatter that we're taught didn't exist for me as a child, nor does it exist pretty much for any child. And so I was young enough where all that stuff hadn't built up.
Right.
And I was able to do it without conscious thought. It's not like I just you know, as this stuff is happening, I'm thinking, let's try this. And it moved. And then it scared the crap out of me. So yeah, to answer to your listeners.
I'm going to stop you and say, but they had the evidence the next day to chase the doubt away.
That was the thing. Now I'll give you a little bit more of the book. The next incident that happened was 14 or 16. I can't remember. It was one or the other. That one was interesting. Not that the others weren't. I was walking so it was a 2-story house, fairly big, and my room was downstairs. My folks lived upstairs, or upstairs, downstairs. And there's this long hallway to get to my room. And I remember walking to my room at night. It was darker. It was, and the lights weren't on in some of the part. And I remember this oppressive force like sitting on me.
Mm.
And it's hard to even put words to this. It gave me the fear of ever doing what I did at 6, 8, and 12 again. It was like either an outside source was telling me you shouldn't be doing this, this is not okay, or my own internal dialogue had created this outside force that actually stopped those occurrences from that waterbed.
Were you laying down at the time?
No, I was walking in a hall and I felt completely squished, like completely squished.
Okay. Because in that situation, usually people laying down, and I describe that, and people agree, maybe you do too, it feels like an elephant sat on your chest.
Yeah.
And so actually, it's a positive thing, Kris.
At the time, it didn't feel very positive.
No, I can tell you over my 50 years that all spiritual awakenings come with an uncomfortable, what can we call it, precursor to what happened. But that was opening up the chakras in your heart or your thyroid. But I've never heard anybody have that while they're standing up. Usually they're laying down. And it's very rare, okay, indeed. But it puts enough doubt in your mind to say, I'm tampering with something, and scares you. But that's also
exactly what it ended up doing. It put doubt in my mind.
Right. And that's the challenge. Okay.
But then here's what happened at 18. I'm giving away a lot of the first chapter, but
no, you're not. You're just telling us your life story. We got to get those juicy details. And where's that book again? She'll hold it up again. Not everybody see that
absolutely.
Cover. That's a beautiful cover. So
thank you.
That's the book, and you get the details of these amazing stories Kris is talking to us right now. And it's everywhere.
And it's not a small book.
I see that. That looks like 300 pages at least.
It's about 400.
There you go, 400 pages. Wow. That's twice the size of a normal book, everybody. You know, the one you pay $30 for with 200 pages. I'm not going to ask Kris how much it costs, but you get double the size there. Here you go. Okay, that's my commercial for you there, Kris. There we go.
Thank you.
It is a beautiful cover, though. Okay, so carry on in the book.
So at 18, I had... No. I'm getting my years wrong. 18, a different thing happened. 14, it was 14 when I got squished. It was 16 when this next thing happened. I'm getting my timeline back together.
No worries. That was a while ago.
In North Dakota, you're able to get, we lived out of town, and so you're able to get your driver's license when you're younger. So I got mine when I was 15. And my folks gave me a Mustang Mach 2. to use as my vehicle.
Wow.
And it's a Mustang, but it was not it kind of looked like a sport coupe, but it did not have a big engine. I think it was a 4-cylinder. Anyway, in 1 month, I had 6 accidents.
What?
Each one, it started out with I slid very slowly into a parked RV. It was in North Dakota. It was icy. It was winter. And I felt so horrible, my first accident, that I went up and rang the doorbell and told the people, and they came out and looked and laughed at me because it didn't do any damage to anything. That was accident 1. And if we have time or you want to hear about my story about how the elephants work, kind of like your elephant that sits on you, I have a whole story about elephants. But anyway, the second one was a little bit bigger. The third one was a little bit bigger. All the way to the 6th one, where a lady in a full-size Cadillac ran a stop sign and moved the passenger door to about middle of the car.
With nobody in it, fortunately.
Nobody in the passenger side, yeah. I was there
Wow.
going, wow. So my dad opts to have it fixed, which is odd in itself because it was pretty
The frame
dinged
would
up.
be bent, right? I mean, that was a lot of work, right? Okay.
So he had it fixed. I picked it up the evening after it was repaired. And as I said, we lived out of town. And it was old Highway 10. And it had snowed. And being a kid, I was driving too fast. I was probably driving 65, 70 miles an hour. And this black pickup truck is coming at me like this. He's all over the road.
He's drunk.
So I pull off as far as I can to the side, and actually my tires are now in the snow a little bit as he goes whizzing by and misses me by inches. Now I have a new problem.
How to get out of the
snow is sucking the car down the hill towards the concrete pylon of a bridge.
Oh gosh.
At 60 miles an hour. All of a sudden, I felt this huge surge of energy, a flash of light, and I'm now going perpendicular across the road. I shear 6 trees off. The car is 3 feet off the ground. The steering wheel my legs are hanging off of, which punctured the driver's seat that I was sitting in. The engine is torn out of the car, and I had not a scratch on me.
Somebody picked you up.
Either somebody or I did.
Oh,
right. Either way, it was not my time to go.
No.
So I crawled out of the car underneath the window and got out, and the pickup truck took off. I crawled up on the road. I went across the road, and I kid you not, the car tire tread is going. There's a lump of about 1 inch of snow where it changed and went 90 degrees different, and I was going 60 miles an hour. Now, if you think about the physics of that,
almost impossible. Yeah.
Only impossible in the normal world.
Well, since we don't live in the normal world, of course that's happened.
Again, this was very visceral, real truth. It's not like, and I mean, everybody listening to me, again, you take the grain of salt and you have at it, right? For me, it was very real because I was there. It took 3 wreckers to pull the damn car out of the trees. So my folks came and got me, and everybody thought somebody died in this car. Not a scratch. I mean, we're not talking even an abrasion.
Not your time. Not your time.
Not my time.
You had to be on the Soul Report Live. That's why you got saved from that moment to be here today. Of course, a lot of other moments along the way. We're glad you're here. I'm going to ask Oz, has anybody been chiming in at on the chat, or do we have anybody emailing at soulreportlive@gmail.com?
Yeah, we've
Got
got
to be one or two questions, I would think, for Kris here.
Yeah, well, I would ask people to put their questions in. We have quite a few folks on Facebook and YouTube watching. Yeah, so we have a question here from a Turnist on YouTube. And the question is, I'm curious both Douglas and Kris's response. I feel stuck and running in circles. How can we tell when we're supposed to keep waiting versus take action on what's next, especially when we don't know exactly what's next, but can feel a breakout coming?
Since Kris is a guest, I'll let him go first.
So I would suggest that feeling stuck is where you're coming up on something that is going to be a fundamental change versus a minor change. And that the best thing probably to do is relax into asking yourself where you are and where you'd like to be.
That's a good answer. So the words that come to my mind is better to do something than nothing. And if you don't know where to go, take a few steps and you'll find out. Kris has been, his whole life has been one of moving forward, and in a very, I would say, unusual way. Unusual in as much as what Kris has been seeing, and I don't mean to speak for you at all, is that you've seen the reality of the invisible made visible. And so this lady's saying, I feel something's coming. No, I'm saying, okay, do something. Find out what it is. Don't sit there on a couch hoping and praying and waiting, because that never works.
Ask questions. Ask questions of yourself.
There you go.
Why am I feeling stuck? What is it I'm afraid of? Where do I not want to go? What do I think is going to happen? I mean, it's the questions that start carving away at the fear, because there's something there that's holding, and then figuring out where the doubt plays in.
You know, I think, Kris, a lot of people are afraid to make mistakes. That's why they don't do anything.
Well, we're taught again as kids, mistakes are bad. Don't make them.
And you and I both know that's exactly opposite.
Mistakes are huge. They teach all kinds of lessons.
There you go. Oz, we got another question?
Yeah, let's see. Attorney said, thanks, Douglas and the team, for all you do. And they'll be listening for the answer, so thank you.
We're very grateful. We're glad that you're here watching the show. Remember to ring that bell, click the click, do whatever you do, follow us. That's the best. I'm really happy and I'm grateful. Continue.
Yeah. Kris, can you teach someone how to move things?
No. What I can do is provide ways of looking for them to learn how to move things for themselves. I can't teach anybody that's not ready in their own cycle to move things. What I can do, so one of the things I talk about in the book is we've got Jesus, we've got Buddha, and you'll get a kick out of this. My mom called me after she started reading the book when I first published. She says, "What are you thinking?" Because in the first chat, even in the introduction, I said, okay, we've got Jesus, we've got Buddha, Eckhart Tolle, and then Elon Musk. And she says, why are you including Elon Musk in this list of these people, these spiritual leaders? I said, because it's not necessarily about spirituality. It's about removing doubt and exceeding what we're told we can't do. And Elon's a perfect example of that. People told him he can't land rockets. He's landing rockets. You can't build a car company. It won't work. He's done that. And the list goes on. The spiritual people that we're taught about, we'll use Jesus as a perfect example, were a lot of the teachings, and this again is a personal insight, and everybody can take it and however they wish. I would argue that Jesus never wanted to be revered and put on high. I would argue that Jesus did those things in order for people to understand what they could do. And I would say that in all the theologies I've read, the teachers in those theologies, it's the impression I got was they weren't trying to put themselves on a pedestal. They were trying to say, hey, folks, stop looking at the curtain and open it up. See what I'm showing you. Look, I'm doing this. I'm getting to the answer to the question about moving things. Is you start looking behind that curtain, you start removing the doubt. So in the book, I have this concept of, I already mentioned the orchard illusion, which is what I would call reality. Then there's the orchard hush, which Gabe later on in the chapters goes into, and he starts playing with things like moving objects, telekinesis type of things like you're asking me about. And I've written it in such a way that you can follow Gabe's story and choose to use some or all of what Gabe does in the story and potentially do exactly what you're asking for. But it all comes down to, at least in my belief, of the more you can remove doubt, the more things you can do. So small things, you can get rid of most of the doubt. If you want to start teleporting around, you pretty much have to get rid of 100% of the doubt, because that's a pretty big deal. And so getting rid of 100% of doubt, that's where NDEs come in, near-death experiences. So when that flash happened and the car moved, doubt wasn't in play for me, because it was either I'd be dead or I had to do this. So you'll find that a lot of people that go through near-death experiences do and experience things that are beyond what we considered real, because they didn't have a choice and doubt wasn't in play. To the extent that we remove doubt and start believing in what we are, the closer and more we can do. One of the things I'd suggest to whoever asked the question is, there's actually a classroom. I've seen some videos. It's hilarious in a nice way, in India, where they teach kids to learn telekinesis, and it's happening as we speak. And what they do is they take a pin, a needle with some paper, and they put a glass globe over it, and they sit there and they relax into moving the paper and spinning it one way or the other, which is very lightweight work. But once you start believing you can move the paper just an inch or half an inch, you go, oh, wait, I did it. You do it a little bit more. Wait, the doubt starts getting stripped away. And the illusion starts pulling back, and you start moving and spinning it. You go, oh, wait, I'm spinning this thing. And so it's just either a flash of removing all doubt or an incremental stripping away of doubt that I would argue gets you to moving things with your mind.
Well, we just have a couple more minutes left in the show. We have another question or two.
Yeah, we have a question. Does Kris do personal appointments?
I have a business mentorship program that I do. I have not gone down the direction of a spiritual program. However, I'm always open to talking with people and sharing ideas.
One last question, Oz.
Let's see, we got a comment here. Great show. Thank you.
Please subscribe, everybody. Please subscribe. We'd love to have you subscribe to our channel.
Yeah. Let's see here. Guess there's a general question. What do you think about current events in the world today?
Well, my first response would be which ones? There's a lot going on. The old Chinese proverb immediately jumps to mind is, should you live in interesting times? You've got political around that question. You've got technological around that question. You've got spiritual growth around that question. I mean, there's some pretty big things moving right now. We're in the cusp of a huge spiritual change based on all the different astrological things going on and things like that. The political scope is all over the map, and we could spend hours talking about that, which I'm not going to do. The advent of AI on computer technology is going to fundamentally, in my opinion, change the world far beyond anything we've seen, even with the internet. And I think that we're going to see some some incredibly big changes in the next 5 to 15 years, just on the AI side of things. So I don't know which topic your listeners are wanting to talk about, but we're in a bunch of interesting times right now.
The listeners are pretty smart. They're a diverse audience. They're always ahead of the game. And your comments tonight, my friend, are well received on this show. And I'm sure, as you can see by the number of questions, you're a very popular guest. So it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. One last time, let's see that beautiful cover of that book.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And it's called The Infinity Within You. And so rush out and get it right away before they sell out fast. Listen, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for being on the show, Kris.
Thank you, Douglas. I very much appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Very, very interesting man. So as in the show, that we usually have a news and views on world conditions, and tonight we didn't go too far into that. There have been reports, as Kris has mentioned, about violent increases in different parts of the world, including attacks in Australia, near Brown's College. There's been a shooter, as well as other attacks that underscore what's going on in our world today. And so experts often point to the increased stresses, the travel pressures, loneliness, and unresolved trauma as factors contributing to spikes around major holidays. I've been wondering that myself. Why is it always around major holidays? This offers a big spiritual angle, the need for compassion, community, and support, especially during supposed joyful seasons. You could also mention that every headline is a cry for compassion. The atheist always challenges us. And I don't believe in God, and they give us their reasons for it. And then earlier on in my career, I found out what they're really asking is for me to prove to them that there really is a spiritual consciousness out there. Otherwise, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't be upset about everybody having views about spiritual things and God and having future incarnations and what the meaning of life is. So when people are crying out for help, even though sometimes it seems nasty or violent, try to be compassionate and listen to their cry for help. This time of year should be warm and peaceful, yet the headlines tell another story. This is why spiritual matters in practical action. When fear rises, so must compassion. When violence appears, so must peace. Because we live in this world of duality, one action provokes another. When someone feels alone, someone else must choose to be present. This is how we change the world, one moment at a time. So again, my friends, as we approach the heart of this sacred season, may the light within you burn brighter than any candle or decoration. Remember, Christmas is not a date. It's a daily choice to embody love, to practice kindness, and to serve your neighbor with an open heart. If these words stirred something in you, and I hope my guest tonight was meaningful and his life story somewhat entertaining, as well as exciting and revealing, let's hope that this reflection will send a message to you. Of course, please email us at thesoulreportlive@gmail.com with your comments, with your suggestions, and we'd love to hear from you. but we would sincerely love to have you subscribe to our channel so that we can continue to take this message to share your story, our story, and the insights and the accomplishments of Here We Go Again, the Soul Report Live. Next week, we'll have another exciting guest, and we'll have an inward journey with more wisdom, more illumination, and more support for your soul's path. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell. My amazing guest tonight has been Kris Land and Oz, Jack Bala, co-producer behind the curtain tonight. We say good night and God bless.